a very important value that I learned in international school was like the open-mindedness. Knowing that there are so many types of people and so many ways you can dress, so much diversity out there, because a lot of my classmates were bilingual, but they all had different backgrounds, like maybe Hafu, maybe even more mixed race. A few of them were actually like born and raised in the US or somewhere else and then came to Japan. And so to have that little bubble of diversity around me was so important to make me realize that the world is so much more broader than just Japan.
Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Japan podcast, which is sponsored by JobsinJapan.com, the best place on the internet to find your next job in Japan. I'm Charlie, and in this episode, I'm talking with my friend Hana, who grew up in Japan and went to international school, but studied in Canada and worked in the United States. We talk about what it's like growing up in Japan as a so-called Hafu, about what it's like going to international school and how that shaped her personality and experience, and reverse culture shock after coming back to Japan from years abroad. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Hana, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your experience growing up in Japan, for context and for people who aren't watching the video podcasts on YouTube that we have. You're from an international background. Your mom is from America and your dad is from Japan. And so a lot of people have a lot of preconceptions about what it's like to grow up as what they call Hafu in Japan, which is mixed race Japanese. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience and what it was like without sort of like jumping into all of the stereotypes and people's preconceptions?
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to talk about this. I was born and raised in Yokohama, which is a beautiful harbor city, like 30 minutes from Tokyo. I was there for 18 years of my life, and then I moved to like Canada for university. But I mean, that was those 18 years were obviously the most important part of maybe years of someone's life. Basically you're learning all of the values and your languages and your identity. And I think going to international school for me was really, really positive. It's hard for me to compare exactly the international school experience versus Japanese because I never went to Japanese school.
Right.
But uh, my mom had always decided that I would go to international school. My brother went to Japanese school for a little bit, for like preschool a little bit. But he didn't have the best time. There was a little bit of like bullying, not like bullying in the full sense of its word, but like teasing because he looks different, and obviously it's when you look different you might be treated different. And so
well, especially in Japan, because I've had experiences where I was teaching in junior high schools where if the kids had brown hair, they'd be asked to dye it black, like that kind of level of strictness in the conformity to what you look like and looking Japanese.
Exactly. And also for my mom as well, just going through a little bit of Japanese education with my brother, like had it really hard, like because all of the expectations on a mother to like make the bentos, your lunch boxes really beautiful, and like the kids kind of compare their bentos during lunchtime, and then my brother would, I don't know, not have like beautiful seaweeds cut out in rabbit shapes or something. And so it's like, but it's not my mom's thing. Like she's from Hawaii. Like she didn't learn this stuff. So obviously it was really hard for her as well. So she just decided for me just to put both of us in international school. And I also like, in addition to not looking fully Japanese, I also like dressed boyish a lot. And I think that's something that I couldn't really do if I were to go to Japanese school. Like there's definitely like a girls and then boys sort of like division that is quite clear. And what you wear is also kind of like expected, like girls wear skirts, guys wear pants kind of thing, but I really felt uncomfortable wearing skirts like
Mhm.
all my life. And so it was so nice to have that like freedom in international school where I could wear like trousers, and it wasn't a big deal at all. Like the teachers were like, of course, just do whatever you're comfortable with.
Mhm.
um and so that definitely was a positive.
Yeah.
um
Would you say that there are some I would assume that there are some trade-offs to going to international school in terms of like your cultural identity of, if you go to a normal Japanese school, like, there might be some struggles and stuff, but you come out probably know it, like having gone through that Japanese education system like everyone else, and therefore you maybe know all of the, references, and when people talk
mm,
about what it's like at school, like you get that, and you understand it intimately. Whereas, for me,
mm,
when people talk about all of the cultures and things that they learned at school in Japan, I'm like, that's so different from what I had in the UK. Like, and there's so many like odd cultures, that
mm,
when I came to Japan I thought were very strange, and that now I've kind of
mm.
gotten used to, just because I've been here for so long. But
Right.
yeah, there are trade-offs to like going to an international school and maybe having a more, yeah, obviously international experience, and not necessarily connecting in the same way with Japanese norms.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing that comes to mind is like the cleanliness factor, or like the proper way to do things, which you learn in Japanese school. Like my partner is Japanese and went through all the Japanese school education system, so I hear a lot of it, a lot about it. But basically, there's like a kateka class, and kateka is like household topics. And
Okay.
so when you're in elementary school, everyone takes classes about like how to fold your laundry, or like how to do your laundry
Wow.
properly, or like when there's a stain on it, how you take it off, and all of these like little, I don't know, like life things of like proper way to do things.
Yeah, I think in
um
the West that might be called home economics.
is that a thing?
Yeah, I think
Home
in it's not.
economics.
I don't really know, because I never really experienced that in my school in the UK.
Okay,
But I think
okay.
in some schools they'll have something called like home ec or something, which is like home economics. It's
Ah,
basically like how to do laundry, how to do basic things that are sort of like, being able to live independently things. But I
right.
don't think it's standardized. I don't think it's like the same across every school or every place. I think it
Ah.
incorporates a lot of different things, and I don't think it would have things like how to fold your laundry properly. Like,
It's
that
pretty
sounds
crazy,
very,
right?
like, a bit too
Yeah,
strict.
I know, but it's also like fun to imagine what I would have learned if I did take those kind of classes.
Mm,
And like I would, I don't know, the value that Japanese people put in uh, being proper and being nice to things, even like objects, like tables,
mm.
and they're so good at keeping things last a long time. Like I feel like I break things a lot, but there's something, I don't know, the care that people put into to objects and things and furniture. I think is maybe comes from that kind of education
Yeah.
of learning how to fold your laundry properly and keeping your
I
clothes clean.
I
I
thought that
don't
was just
know.
a part of like Japanese culture, and I didn't realize that it's
Yeah,
actually something that's specifically taught in school. So that's super interesting.
it is. Yeah, I also thought I mean, I'm sure it's also like thanks to like the Shinto sort of Buddhist like background of the
Right.
religion aspects of have believing that there are spirits in objects. And so I think that definitely is there as well, but for kids nowadays, like they're actually taught to sort of care for
And it's really
things.
funny because I think people from the West who come to live here for a short amount of time, I don't think
Mm,
they I think most people think of Japan as kind of a secular country, right? It's not like
mm,
America that has like a really strong Christian foundation, or the UK, which has, the history of like the Church of England
mm,
and religiosity. Um, Japan, it almost seems like people are 90%, a-religious, not religious.
mm,
But I think Shinto Buddhism is actually kind of interwoven in the fabric of the culture in a way that's not like, going to church and professing to the one true faith, but that definitely permeates society without people necessarily realizing that.
I really, really think so as well. And I think there was that Netflix TV show that was really popular. Kondo, there was some lady who was
Marie Kondo,
Marie Kondo,
right?
and she would like go into people's houses and then help them clean out their clutter. And but before she would start, she would sit on the ground and like thank the space for create for like show gratitude toward the home and then the things that they're gonna throw away. And so like showing respect to the object. And I do think she has like a proper like Shinto background, but I felt like that reflected a lot of the mentality of people and approach to objects, which
Yeah,
I don't know, I
I
thought that
never
was
watched the
beautiful.
Netflix thing, but I did read the book before the Netflix
Oh,
special
okay.
became a thing, and I think I got to the point of throwing away like 40% of my clothes, and then I was just like, okay, that's all I needed. I'm fine now. I'm generally pretty clean.
Okay. Wow,
Um,
so you did it.
yeah, and I
Huh.
didn't do the whole like spiritual part of it.
Right, right, right.
That
No,
was a
no,
bit
no.
too much for me.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of like a religious,
Right, right, right.
but um, but I guess that does make Japan really different from a lot of places that
Mm,
that there are these sort of cultural things. So I wonder, like, from your perspective, being able to see this from having grown up in Japan and
mm,
then moved to Canada, moved and lived in the United States as well for a while. Um, how how did that form your perspective on Japan, especially coming back to Japan before the pandemic, after living in the West? That
mm.
must have been a really interesting experience for you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so much there. Um, yeah, I feel like it definitely made me reflect on my comfort in each language.
Hmm.
First and foremost, that was a big thing. Like I really missed Japanese when I was in Canada. Um, I don't know if this answers your question directly,
No, no,
but
go ahead.
yeah, but I guess going through the international education and having all of my education in English, I was most comfortable speaking in like formal situations in English
Hmm.
and being able to like articulate my thoughts and share my opinion was definitely an English thing for me. But everything else, like my off time, like in between classes, talking with friends about a show we watched on TV, or like my humor side was definitely in Japanese.
Hmm.
And so when I went to Canada, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having such a hard time making friends because I can't speak Japanese. And Japanese was like my little key to connect with people because it was through humor. Because my
Hmm.
humor, I think, is very Japanese because I will always watch TV in Japanese, like Japanese
Yeah.
television. And so I really had a hard time making friends. But obviously, like when it's a class situation and we're having a debate or a discussion, I'm super comfortable in English. Um, that was an interesting like self-reflection that I had toward like how I use the two languages I speak.
There's a term for that. I think it's called code switching.
Okay.
So code switching is where you change the way that you speak depending on which situation you're in. So if
Mm,
your all of your English has been learned in a classroom situation, then you're much more likely to speak as though you're in a classroom in that language.
right.
Which is one of the reasons why I always, when I was an English teacher, I was
Mm,
always recommending people to, listen to things that they're interested
mm,
in. Like, don't just like look for English language education books, because then you're
mm.
going to sound like a textbook when you speak. No one wants to sound like a
That's
textbook. And
true.
it's the same thing for me. I learned that by learning Japanese. Was that,
Yeah.
I would go out with my friends and I would say, oh, what was the thing that I said that someone like laughed in my face at? And I felt
Oh
so
no.
self-conscious about my Japanese after
Oh.
that, but it helped me. I think I was out to dinner at an izakaya with some coworkers.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I wanted to order something for my friend, and I'd read in a textbook or I'd listened in like an audio book or something that you can say like tabe tagatteru or something like that.
Okay.
I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
But I said like in a really like super like almost like keigo or son keigo to say
Oh.
like I'm gonna eat this, and then my honored friend would like this kind of, you know, like that. I don't know what it was in Japanese. I can't
Right,
remember
right,
exactly what I said.
right.
And my friend like started laughing her ass off
Oh.
because I'd said this thing that was incredibly formal and like you would if you were maybe service staff or something like that in a really,
Oh.
you know, formal situation.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you should say like taberu or something like, and I was like, but it says tabemasu in the book. And I was
Right,
like,
right.
no. She's like, but that's what you say when it's more formal. So
Right.
that really helps me to realize that that code switching, that context switching is
Mm,
super important. So
mm,
for your experience is that you learned all of your English in a school setting, and
yeah.
your Japanese was how you made friends. So
Yes.
how did you get over that? Was that something that you were able to overcome, or was it something that kind of affected your ability to make friends in Canada and then you just like started again in the States?
Oh, no, I think I got used to it. And I just learned to kind of embrace that, I'm probably not gonna get the sarcasm sort of humor that in English, like it's really hard for me to get that and like jokes. Like I'm always the one who's like, what? Because I can't get it, when someone says a joke. Like my brain doesn't function that way. So I kind of just like embraced it. And then, I found friends who embraced me for that. So
Mhm.
it worked out. Um, but definitely in terms of like the difference in culture between Japan and like, um, you know, English speaking country, well, Canada, where I was, in relation to language was what you mentioned, the keigo. I think being in a culture where keigo didn't exist, like in English, where it's very, casual, and when you walk in a restaurant and you speak very casually with the waiter or waitress, there's no distance
Mm.
between strangers. Like one time I was walking in a supermarket in Canada and I sneezed, and then this random lady was like, "Bless you." And I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet." Like there's no distance between strangers. And I think that's a reflection of how the language, there's no like tier in
Mm.
language, like super formal that you have to speak with elders
Well,
or.
what's interesting is that there is, but it's the culture defines it differently, especially in North America. So
Mm,
this is something that I studied when I was doing philosophy at university. Was there's a philosopher called Alexis de Tocqueville who went to the United
mhm,
States during its first foundations, and
mhm,
he said that one of the things that was really different about the United States was in France, you know, when the noble person walked past, you get out of the way, you let their horse pass, and you bow or
mm,
like avert your eyes or those kind of things. And those experiences, those behaviors that are kind of like inculcated in you when you're a child, those tell people where they are in society. And
mm,
America didn't have that. It had this flattening from a perspective of language and behavior. But what was really interesting about his critique was that it's not that people didn't have class. It's not that
mm,
there wasn't a class structure. It's just that the class structure became invisible because
mm,
people were, you know, talking to each other as if, you know, they're buddies with the mayor. And it's like,
mm,
you're not buddies with the mayor. You might feel like you are because the way you're speaking, but it kind of obfuscates that class distinction is that he's the mayor, he has all of this power and control, and you're just some guy, you know. And so I think by having Keigo, Japan makes it clear who's in a position of power during the
yeah,
conversation.
mm,
Whereas in a lot of Western culture, and it's not so much in the UK. I think the UK has a much stronger class system than America.
mm.
But yeah, in America especially, and in Canada, that yeah, it's very different. It's much more flattened.
Yeah, and in a way for me, I think it was quite refreshing to be able to just chat with your waiter or waitress, like n- just a human, they're people, right? Like, but so I guess when I came back to Japan, and I'm observing like how the people, the front lady or whoever at the lobby is like so, standing proper and like bowing every 5 seconds and using like I'm a queen or something. It's like it's a culture shock again. Like it's a re culture shock. I
Reverse
don't
culture shock or something.
reverse
Yeah.
culture shock, yeah, or
Right.
something, because I was so embedded in it that I didn't notice it until I left, and then I
Yeah.
came back, and then it's like, wow, I kind of get why like Japan's customer service is like top notch in the world, but
Yeah.
also it's like you kind of forget that they're human in a way. And I think that's why a lot of Japanese people can like expect perfection a lot
Mhm.
because
Because they
like
get perfection a lot. It happens in Japan.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the expectation. And which is a hard expectation to live up to. Um and so I don't know, that was definitely a big I guess realization for me. Um and then I guess relearning how to or because I actually had a 4 month like part-time job at a convenience store
Yeah.
in Japan like when I came back one summer. Um and I had to after having spent some time in that sort of casual, no distance between strangers, like everybody's, happy, lovely, sort of like Canada to Japan where the customer is like God. There's a phrase in Japanese that お客様 is kami-sama, which is customers are God.
Yeah.
And so it it's kind of extreme if you think about it. But I kind of put myself in that situation and had to talk to my elders in the keigo way, like the respectful way, which I had to learn because I never had to use that at school. Like I didn't really like properly learn it.
Mm.
So I kind of just learned on the job and just realizing the little things as well. Like for example, this like stuck out to me so big was when we clean the bathrooms, like the toilets every morning, in the convenience store, and you have your like convenience store uniforms, right? I totally assumed that you would clean the toilet with your uniform on because that's why you're wearing the uniform to protect your normal clothes. But my senpai, my elder, told me to take off my uniform, then clean the bathroom with my own clothes, then put the uniform back on and serve the customer.
Mm.
And the thinking is that you don't want to have any stains or any kind of smell on the uniform that you wear in front of the customer. And so I feel like it might be the opposite in a place like Canada because the focus is more on I guess yourself in a way. And so you would want to keep your own clothes clean. And so
Yeah.
that's why you wear the uniform and clean the bathroom. But here, the focus is more on the customer or on the other and the 迷惑をかけない, like don't trouble the other,
Right.
is such a big part of the culture. And so uh, to make sure that the uniform is the cleanest,
Mm.
you know?
I mean, that makes sense. Like there are a lot of things in Japan that for I think for foreigners they might seem sort of strange when you look at them at first if you haven't had anyone explain to you the reason why those things happen, the reason why people behave in that way.
Mm.
Um, and I wonder, like, what are some of the things that when you went to the United States or you went to Canada that you thought, like, I really miss about Japan? Like, apart from things like the super obvious things like, customer service and
Mm-hmm.
convenience and things like that, and maybe
Yeah.
like the train system, which in Tokyo and in Japan is
Yeah.
great.
Mm.
What were some of the things that you really missed that you don't think many other countries do?
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the conversation, and I just want to take a quick moment to mention that this podcast is only possible because of the support of JobsinJapan.com. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com. There are tons of jobs on there, not only in English teaching, but also software engineering, hospitality, marketing and consulting, among many others. Most of the jobs on the board do not require any specific level of Japanese, and you can get started in minutes. So next time you're looking for a job, check out JobsinJapan.com, and let's get back to the conversation.
I definitely missed living with the seasons. The idea of like living so close to whatever season is there at the present time. Like Hanami, like the spring season of going to Hanami is literally like flower watching, when you have a picnic under the cherry blossom tree and really enjoy the spring coming in and the warmth. And uh, that aspect of like really, and even through food, like I feel like every season, um like even Starbucks has like a seasonal drink that comes up every every season.
I think that's a huge part of the culture here. And one of the things that's
Yeah.
really weird about that to me is the different chocolate and ice cream that you have available seasonally when it's not a seasonal thing at all. You know, I can understand
Yeah.
if you can only get like kaki, which is the persimmons, which I really
Yeah.
love. You can only
Mm.
really get those in autumn, right? Because they're
Mm.
an autumn fruit.
Yeah.
But I love mint chocolate ice cream. And for
Okay.
some reason in Japan, that's a summer thing. I don't, please try and
Oh.
help me understand that, because there are these great mint chocolate ice creams in summer, and then the rest of the year you can't find any mint chocolate ice cream no matter how much you look.
Is that right? Even at the convenience store?
Even the convenience store, like I'm constantly
Really?
looking, and if I see anything that's like, they have like the, you know, terrible low
Yeah.
quality you know, spongy mint ice cream like you see
Right.
around, but like the interesting, like they always have like limited edition flavors, and
Oh,
it's always
yeah.
only in summer, and
That is
it
so
makes me so
funny.
sad because I love mint
Oh.
chocolate chip ice cream. I actually learned to make ice cream myself so
No
that I could
way.
make mint ice cream because I love it so much.
Oh my gosh. You
Yeah.
can feed yourself during all the other seasons.
I mean, during all the other seasons, it's kind of like it's a lot of work, but it's like, okay,
Yeah, that's true.
I need some mint ice cream, like just to make me feel better. So, I mean, but that's the
Wow.
thing, like you said, it is really living close to the seasons. It is, and for some reason, Japanese people are incredibly proud that
Mm.
Japan has 4 distinct seasons,
Mm.
which I never understood. Do you have any idea where that comes from?
Yeah, there's just so many like activities and festivals and so many things that that change depending on the I don't know. Sorry, I don't really have a good
It's okay.
answer.
I mean, it is an interesting thing to think about, basically.
Yeah, yeah, it
But
is.
I don't know where it comes from, but yeah.
Yeah,
So I want to know more about your experience in international school here, because I
yeah.
think a lot of people, and it's myself included, if I were ever to stay in Japan and have kids here, I feel very strongly like I would want my kids to go to international school. I'd like do
Mm,
whatever I could to earn enough money to send my kids to international
mm,
school, because I've worked in public schools in Japan, and I think being having like, you know, I would have mixed race kids, or maybe I would have mixed race kids, I don't know, but it would be a different experience for them, going to a Japanese school, where I feel like it would be harder for them to be accepted into Japanese society, just by virtue of the fact that they look different. Um,
mm,
so what is your experience of like how international school kind of shaped your personality and your ability to then kind of go into Japanese society and be treated, you know, as a, I mean, you grew up in Japan, first 18 years of your life you're living in Japan,
mhm,
but I wonder if, you know, working in Japanese companies or working with Japanese people, that they notice a difference, you know, because of your
mhm.
sort of international school background.
Yeah, I think a very important value that I learned in international school was like the open-mindedness, knowing that there are so many types of people and so many ways you can dress, so much diversity out there, because a lot of my classmates were bilingual, but they all had different backgrounds, like maybe Hafu, maybe even more mixed race. um, a few of them were actually like born and raised in the US or somewhere else and then came to Japan. um, and so to have that little bubble of diversity around me was so important to make me realize that the world is so much more broader than just Japan.
Mhm.
um but I feel like in Japanese school, when everybody's sort of Japanese, everybody's kind of really really deep inside the Japan bubble, protected bubble. It's hard to, when you do meet someone who's different from you, to have the open-mindedness to be like, wow, tell me more. It's more like a shock, right?
Mhm.
um and so I'm very glad that I was able to have that diversity around me and learn about the open-mindedness, and always have the option to be able to go outside of Japan after high school. that was definitely encouraged, which is such a great thing, I think. There were all these like, you know, university posters from around the world, like on the corridor, and you look at it and be like, oh, where do you want to go? Like, you know, in which country? Like going outside of Japan was always an option for us.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if Japanese students who go through the very purely Japanese education system have the same sort of like opportunity, or at least the option even in their heads, you know.
Right. Or to be
Yeah,
encouraged by someone in the school who maybe
yeah,
can say, oh, like you would do great in United States or something.
exactly.
There are ways that maybe, especially teachers, people like myself, I taught a lot of kids in a lot of different schools. I've worked in like way too many schools. I think I had like 6 or 7 different schools I
Wow.
worked at over the course of like an 8-year teaching career, which kind of
Mm.
tells you a lot about how little tolerance I have for things. But I switched schools a lot, and in every school there were some kids that I was able to really connect with and really show them like you can do the thing that you're dreaming about that no one else believes you can do, or that no one else understands, like you can do it. And I had some students who didn't go to university and went to Mexico instead, because they wanted to do something different and exciting. And
Mm.
I feel like those people, like maybe not in the sort of traditional Japanese sense of having a stable government career or
Mm.
something where they can make a good salary and work 80 hours a week for the rest of their life, or I don't know, like
Mm.
where they can have a stable salary and work comfortably for the rest of their life and support a family. Those people are maybe further ahead, but in terms of self-understanding and like feeling connected to who they are, I think a lot of my students who did different things are sort of a lot closer to that, like to really understanding themselves.
Mm. Totally. Yeah. So, uh, yeah, I just imagine if I were to be in Japanese school and I was, expected to wear a skirt and maybe couldn't have gone to Canada because I was doing the juken, like the super intense studying and going to cram school after school, and which a lot of Japanese kids do. It's like all of the blossoming that I was able to do because of the freedom I had of just, being me and just wearing trousers. And even that, it's like such a small thing, but
Mm.
it's so important to a young person to be able to have the option to be who you are.
Right, to feel
Um,
comfortable in your own skin.
exactly. So that really helped with my confidence. Um, and so I'm really grateful for my international school experience.
I think that's an awesome place to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on the podcast.
Of course, thank you for the conversation. It was so fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing your experience. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will as well.
I hope so.